Okay, looks like I am live. So let me know first thing if you can hear my voice, if you can see my screen. So on the screen, what I've done is I have just shared CQRS out there. Let me know if everyone can hear my voice, if you can see my screen. Good evening, Akshat, and good evening, everyone. Uh, So today's topic is CQRS, Command Query uh, Responsibility Segregation, right? And we'll discuss about that. What exactly is the CQRS? Why do we need it? Good evening, Amit, Vijay, Akshat, Praveen, everyone. Good evening out there. Let us try to understand that what is the CQRS? Why do we need it? I have seen a lot of people discussing about CQRS. Discussing about event sourcing, and other things. So CQRS is, I will not say it is a pattern. Let me very frankly admit that personally I don't think it's a pattern, but it is a way of organizing classes into two distinct things: command and query, right? So let me first go ahead and let me explain you what exactly happens. So I'm going to go and open a Visual Studio out here. Uh, and let us try to understand things. So let me go and resume share. So let me go and create a very, very simple project out here. So there my Visual Studio is. And let us try to understand that why do we need this command query responsibility segregation. So there it is, a very simple console application .NET Core I'm creating. Now think about it that you have a business class, like a model, example customer, right? And you use that class to insert data, update data, and delete data, right? So assume that you have a customer class out here which you use, and this class, when you actually go to insert data, you need certain things. For example, you need the ID of the customer, right? You need so when you're doing insert, when you're doing update, when you're doing delete, right? You need the ID. You also need the name, so you cannot insert a customer without a name. So you also have some validations out here, so you can go and you can put some validations like underscore name, right? And you will say that, okay, if the name is null, I won't allow you to do things. So must be you can go here and write some validations like this: if value dot length is equal to 0, throw up a new exception. So for some of the fields, when you're doing insert, update, delete, you also have these validations not allowed, right? Now you think that, okay, this class is great, and while I'm fetching the data, while I'm searching the data, you think about that, how about using the same class, right? But now while searching the data, on your report screen or on your search screen, everywhere you want to go and show some extra two properties. So when you're searching data, you would like to know that who updated this data, right? Updated by and updated time. So you say, okay, fine. So on the same class, you go ahead and when you search, right, you put some two properties out here, and you think about that, why should I go and duplicate a new class and so on, and you use the same class, and here you add these two properties, like one is last updated by, right? And the other one is must be last updated time. So you have a date and time, and you have updated time, right? Right. Now, when you are inserting data, you definitely need these two properties, right? But when you are inserting data, you don't need these two properties. So these two properties are redundant. So when you're inserting data, these two properties are really not needed. When you're searching data, you need all the properties, right? But when you're loading data from the database, you don't need this validation. This validation is just extra. So every time you load data from the database, let's say you're loading 1,000 record, this validation keeps firing, right? So this you do not need while loading, but you need it while inserting, updating, and deleting. These two properties you need, these two properties you need, you do not need, first thing, you do not need while you are inserting, but you need them while you are reading, right? So then you think about that. Okay, so let us do something like this. And this I also do, like, this I have personally felt it. So while I'm reading data, how about, like, I can see that this validation is fired out here while I'm reading data. So I go and I create a flag out here. I say that, okay, let me create a flag saying that is reading true, right? So is reading. So this is reading flag, what it does is, if you are reading from the database, then this validation you don't fire. So you use the same class. You try to adjust everything in the same class. So look, like if is reading, just leave it, return. Great. Then let's say that this customer also has addresses collection. So when you add data to the database, you want to have an address collection. So you say, okay, so there is a one-to-many relationship. So you go ahead and you create an address class. And in this address class, you say, okay, it also has an ID and it also has the name of the address and so on, right? Address one. And you say, okay, like, so this and this has one-to-many relationship, fine. So you say, okay, this and this has one-to-many relationship. So now assume that this address has lots of properties. It has address one, must be, it has city and so on, right? City must be pin code, pin, right? So you say, okay, while adding, what we will do is we will go ahead and we will create a collection, a one-to-many collection. So prop list of one-to-many, right? Addresses. Now, so this address is getting loaded. There is for one customer, there will be multiple addresses. So very good. But, this addresses, while you're reading, you don't need it. While reading, you do not want to load it, because think about it. You load one customer, let's say, and if that customer has 10 addresses, assume, or 2 addresses. So if you load 1 million customer, you will have 1 million into 2 addresses minimum, right? 2 million. So you don't want to load it, right? But, in this address, you want to load the address one. So you say, okay, so what we'll do is we'll make an inner join and so on. So you again create some properties, for address one, just for address one at the top, right? So now more confusion. So you can see here now, these 3 properties out here will not be used while you're inserting. This one out here will not be used while you're reading. This validation out here, you do not want while reading. This validation you want it while inserting. What is happening is you are violating single responsibility principle. You are trying to fit everything into one class, right? If you remember, the single responsibility principle, the solid S, right? Where we say that when you try to overload a class with too many things, you are going to go into such kind of hacks like is reading and this and that and bypass flags and so on, right? And that's what CQRS says. CQRS says that here the biggest problem in your mind is you are more bent towards reusability. Okay, let me talk about it. So what is happening wrong here? You are thinking that as a developer, you are trying to use the same class for insert, update, delete, and read. But the problem is, that the insert, update, and delete is a very, very different context. In insert, update, and delete means you're going to have transactions, you're going to have validations. When you say read means you want to read it as soon as possible. So here the biggest problem is that you think that all these 4 activities are all same, but they're actually very different, right? And so because of that, your class is becoming bulkier. The class is becoming just a gunny bag, and in that you're trying to push everything, right? This is also termed as the LISCO problem. The LISCO problem, the L of the solid. In solid, we have S for single responsibility, O for open close principle, L for LISCO. LISCO means that it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, but it has batteries. So if you go and see LISCO principle, if you ever go and Google around for LISCO, the L of the solid. So the LISCO substitution principle, if you go and just see the image of LISCO, it says very, very clearly, it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, but it has batteries. This customer class looks like you can use it for insert, looks like you can use it for select, but the select, when you're saying select, the select does not need the validations. When you're saying insert, the insert does not need these three fields, right? And you're trying to push everything into one thing. This is also termed in case of domain driven development. There is one more word for this, which is termed as a bounded context. These are all jargons, but it gives you an idea that where you are going wrong from the thought process, right? Bounded context. What do you mean by bounded context? Bounded context means, yes, all of them are bounded by the word customer, by the word address, right? They are bounded by a context, right? They are bounded together by customer, right? But the context is very different. When you're inserting data, it is different. When you're reading data, is different, right? So what CQRS says is that you create two distinct classes, two different classes, right? CQRS. It says that when your client application is trying to insert data, right? When it's trying to insert data, means when it's trying to do command means insert, update, and delete. For this, you create a separate class structure. And when you're trying to read, right, at that time, use a separate class structure, right? Do not mix both of them. So when you're trying to read, use a different class structure. When you're trying to insert, use a separate class structure. CQRS, command. This is the command class. Query, right? Responsibility. Both of them are different responsibility. Responsibility is segregation principle, right? So segregate both of them and do not mix both of them. So in other words, what it says fundamentally is that create two classes. So Control X. I'm going to go and delete all this. So this is the class for insert, right? So here it is. This is a class for insert. So, okay, this is the class for insert. Create a different class for query. So class for insert is this, and the class for query can be something else. Public class, customer query. Now, if you remember, a lot of people are already creating these reporting classes. If you have ever seen in your projects out there, you will always find that there are already reporting classes, which are created, right? So, well, that reporting word is now very polished. You can say query, right? So now here I will say, and I would suggest don't even try to inherit it. A lot of people think that I feel that, this, the reusability, this is what happens. When your mind, goes too much towards reusability, think about that. This is reusability, right? Okay. And this is the complexity. When you start thinking that I want very, very high reusability, right, your complexity will rise, please note, because you are then trying to fit everything over there, right? But in this case, don't even make a mistake of inheriting it. Don't even think that, okay, let me inherit it because these two properties are same. Must be it is a right idea, but not everywhere. Because for example, now here also, if I try to inherit this, I'm also inheriting the validation, which is not looking good, right? So I would say that just create them separate, right? So I'll go and I'll create a separate class and name without any validation. So this is termed as CQRS. This is the fundamental thing of CQRS. If you have any questions, guys, please go and put down on the chat out there. Command query responsibility segregation, where you think that this class is for insert, update, and delete, and this class is for query, right? And this, we can't say that this is a pattern. Let me tell you. We can say that this is a way of organizing classes. I do understand that people say this is a pattern. But a pattern, when you say, then the pattern has a code structure. Here we don't really have a code structure as such. It is just trying to separate classes, just break the classes into two, right? And one more important point which I want to highlight here is that CQRS is not for everything. CQRS is not for, like, for example, think about it. You have country master. Hardly there are one or two validation. Hardly the properties would differ too much, right? Creating CQRS is a blunder, because what happens is when you do CQRS, for one per operation, you create a class. Means CRUD, create, read, update, delete. So you create a class for create, you create a class for update, you create a class for delete, you create a class for read, you create a class for query, And damn, if you say that I want to do event what do you call event sourcing, then you create a class for event, and then on this you have a dispatcher. You just multiply like 5 times, 10 times. So CQRS, what you should do is you can make it as a late architecting, thinking that okay, let me start with a class, and if I start seeing a lot of those flags out there, is loading, is ready, this, that, and I'm mixing too many things, then you can make a on the point switch and say that now it is time to go and split the classes, right? So guys, let us go ahead and look at the questions. So let me know if there are any questions. I'm going to go now and see the chat questions out there. I'm going to go and go to my window out here. Okay. Is it necessary to break the classes into 2 every time? So good question from Vijay out there. I'm also trying to look at the question. So it is not necessary to break the classes into 2 every time. As I've said, Vijay, like country master, states master, hardly 1 validation, 2 validation, 10 records. No, CQRS is not a bulletproof saying that we have to use it everywhere. That's why a lot of people say that CQRS is not meant to be used at a project level. Like when you say project level means in a project, you will have controller. For example, when you say MVC, you will always create a controller. You will always create a repository and so on, right? So CQRS is not really meant to be done something at the project level. It is, I think this is my thought process here, that CQRS should be done more on the class level. Is that class becoming too complex? If yes, then split. If no, then just leave it, right? So it is not meant to be, to break the classes every time. We will be creating so many queries because every query is different and needs some projected fields. Absolutely, Saurabh. That's why I've said that CQRS is very, very specific, right? This CQRS pattern is discussed so much, must be because the name is very zazzy and very attractive, but we need to understand that there are consequences of using it. I've seen projects, where they have 10 domains and they are just multiplying into 1,000 classes. So yes, is this violating dry? Do not repeat yourself, right? So yes, it does violate dry. So that's what I was saying, Akshat, that do not repeat yourself. One is that, we don't want to repeat ourselves, but, by going too much towards that, what do you say, towards that thing, where we say that, okay, we want to have high reusability. Remember, everything, in everywhere in architecture also, and everywhere in our life also, when you try to do something over, right, too much, it has consequences. So when you try to do over reusability, you will find that you are just loading one class fully. Okay. Is this more useful in microservices? No. Well, I don't feel that microservices or testing, those kind of things, it is suitable. I think it is useful only when your class is getting complicated. Very simple. Is your class getting complicated? Is everything insert, update, deleting all into that class? Is it that class is becoming overloaded? Then it is time to split, right? So, okay. So with that thought, let me go ahead now and let me talk about that how nowadays, people architect CQRS or how they write the classes, right? So very quickly, and here I'm going to go and resume my share. Now, very quickly, I want to just say you that, so let me go here first. So now let's talk about it. Okay, so this is good. So Shiv, what we should do then? Should we just go and try to create 2 classes? How it is, right? So what nowadays developers are doing is that they are trying to create interfaces. They're trying to create interfaces. So what I will do in this class is, let me go and write for command, how the code looks like. I will not write for everything. I will not write for query. I will not write for event. But, in case if you want to just implement the command classes, how does it look like, right? So in CQRS, what developers are doing is they are doing overall the following things. For the command, for the query, for the insert, for the update or whatever, right? They break into 3 layers. One is, let's start with command. So one is you will create a command. A command can be create customer, update customer. It should be a verb, right? A command. This command, somebody has to handle it. If you say create customer, then there should be here ADO.NET insert customer, entity framework, insert customer, some kind of an handler. So one layer is the command. The second layer is who will handle this command. And the middle layer is nothing but the dispatcher. So he says that, okay, send me the command. And if you say create customer command, I will route it to EF customer data access layer, right? So the other thing what you need out here is a dispatcher. So either you are doing command, either you are doing query, either you are doing event sourcing in CQRS, you will always see that developers first start with this 3 thought process in mind: command, dispatcher, and a handler. So the command is fired, the dispatcher decides whom to source this, right? So let me start here. So here what we will do is, let's make this simple. Let's not make it one too many. Let us take this simple. So I'm not going to go and complete query. I'm not going to go and complete event responsibility because it takes a lot of time. Already, like, in the last lecture of Questpond, we are having this architecture training, which is happening every Tuesday, right? And we already had like 4 to 5 hours of dedicated lecture only for CQRS. So at this moment, because this is a 1 hour session, I will try to just give you an idea that how the code looks like. If you want, you can just Google around, or if you want, you can just subscribe to our trainings out there, right? So here's what it is. First thing, this is your model. This is your, let's say that this is create customer. Okay, you can do like this. First, this is your model, right? Now this model, when you say you want to go and create it, you will say that we also have to give him who created it. What is the time it was created? So that means now you'll say, okay, public class create customer inherits from this customer, right? Now remember that because we want the validation, I just inherited it. Must be this inheritance is subjective when it comes to query. Okay. Now here I'll say, okay, 2 more parameters we want to add. One is last updated by. So who is updated by, right? And update date and time, right? Updated date and time, right? Look at the way I've create customer. So the name of the classes of commands should be create customer, update customer, delete customer, right? And in the same way for query, it will be customer query. So now what I'll do is I'll say, okay, so first is, let us go ahead and create an interface of the first layer, I command. Guys, you can please put down your questions out there. I command, fine. This I command will be sent to a dispatcher. So public interface I dispatcher. Also, I've kept some notes here for reference purpose so that, I don't make any mistakes, because one of the things what happens is if your interfaces go wrong in case of the command query, right, then everything goes wrong. Okay. So I've just kept it out here in case if I make any mistakes, right? So now one is, then you will have an I dispatcher. So what is the dispatcher? This dispatcher out here. So one is the command, the other one is the dispatcher, and the last layer which I talked about is the handler, command handler. So normally you will go and you will divide into these 3 things out here. In the modern CQRS, I'm using this word modern CQRS because the old CQRS, which I did with my team lead in 90s, we used to create those reporting classes in a different folder. We used to create our normal classes in a different folder, and that is still a CQRS for me. But this modern way of looking at it, the first thing they divide this, right? And especially when it comes to C#, I've seen that they use heavy generics, heavy generics, right? So here they will say this dispatcher, I'll say your void send I command, right? And the command, or must be, a lot of people also do like this, send T. Yes, they say T, but then you have to say where T is I command. So what this means out here, this means that this dispatcher out here will take in a command object, which can be create customer command or whatever, right? And he will go and connect to one handler, right? Now, this is the command handler out here. So the command handler, what we do out here is the command handler again will say that, okay, I will take up a T, right? And I will handle this command. So void handle this command, right? But again, the restriction is that the T is equal to I command. Oh, it's actually at the class level, at the interface level, I mean, right? If this start goes wrong, then everything goes wrong of yours. So just make sure that your start is right. 3 layers. Shoot the command, dispatcher who checks that, okay, what is the command and dispatches it, right? Let me, and then now the next thing is you will create a command. So I'll say that, okay, you can see that this is a create customer out here. So this create customer is a command, right? So what I'll do is I will implement here I command. I'm just saying that this is a command. Let me just take this at the top. So this is a command. So in the same way, I can have delete customer, I can have update customer and so on, right? For this create customer, let us create an handler out here. So I will go and say public class create customer handler implements I command handler, right? Of type very specific now, create customer, right? And in this, you will go and you will write that code, for insert, update, or delete. So this is the place where you will use entity framework or whatever, right? So I'll say that console.log, not log. I'm not doing JavaScript, right line, damn it. And command dot, you can get all the usernames, IDs and names and updated by, right? So this is where it will take this name and it will insert into SQL Server, or it will use EF Core, right? Or ADO.NET, whatever, right? Or must be some repository, right? So this is the command and this is the handler, right? And in between sits this layer of dispatcher, right? So this will be the layer of dispatcher, right? Who will implement iDispatcher and who will say that whatever command comes to me, I will dispatch it, right? So here is where the dispatcher is. So that's the dispatcher. So here what we will do is we will see what can be the dispatcher. What I can do here is for now, we will just say dynamic, right? Commands, leave this commands, whatever it is. And we will say here, whatever is the command which comes from the top, we will just say command dot send, or I will say handle, I'm sorry, handle to the dispatcher. So remember this command is handle, huh? So handle that command which is coming at the top. I'll tell you why I'm using this command dynamic at this moment. So we'll see that how this command will be figured out. But if you see out here really, right, what you have now, you have 3 layers. You can see that how many classes we are ending up into. But you know what, like if really your class is becoming complicated, then you will need this, right? So now here, one is the I command, the create customer command will be sent to the dispatcher. The dispatcher will figure out that for this create customer command, the handler is this. So if you see this layers out here, first is the command, whatever, create customer command, delete customer command. It first goes to dispatcher. Dispatcher then decides, depending on situation, saying that, okay, it has to be handled by which handler. So create customer handler, or must be something else, right? So 3 layers, please note. Command, dispatcher, and handler. So guys, I'll just go back to the chat out there before I complete this code. Any questions on this 3 interfaces which I've created? So let me go back to the window out there and let me check for things. Okay. How can we decide which design pattern need to be followed? So Mayur, you can send me a mail. First thing, what to use, which design pattern to be followed. It should be very natural. Like for example, you feel that your class is becoming complicated, insert updates and deleting are becoming complicated. You will probably use CQRS. You will say that, okay, like I'm using a lot of new keywords scattered here and there, too many changes happening. You will use factory pattern. And so, right? So basically design pattern is something which is very, it should be like if you have a fever, what do you do? If you have cough, what do you do, right? Some things are which are time tested, you follow. The same things out here. So don't try to buy hard. What is the role of CQRS in event-driven development? Very good question, Deepak. So, well, CQRS does not have anything related to events, but there is a what do you call a connection point, which the DDD people talk about, domain-driven development people talk about it. They say that if, let us say, you are having an update. So let's say the value was for Shiv. You then change to Shiva, and then you change to Shivam, and then you change to something else. You want to keep a track of it, saying that, okay, what happened? Event sourcing. This is called as event sourcing. Saying that, okay, first this change was there, then this change was there, then this change was there, right? And if you want to cancel back, you can revert back if you wish. So that's where, you use event sourcing. Event sourcing is not compulsory in CQRS, right? So in case you want to have a track of trail saying that what happened, right? Then you will have event-driven development, or else it is not needed, right? How different is it than when compared to repository pattern? Okay, good question, Vijay. First thing, repository pattern is very different purpose. Repository pattern deals with data access layers. It deals with, saying that, okay, at the back end, you can have ADO.NET, you can have entity framework, right? And so on. It does not say that break your classes into two. It just says centralize all your data access activity into one class, but it does not say that split the classes. CQRS is very different. CQRS, at the end of the day, that command handler will use repository 100%, right? The CQRS actually will go with repository, but in general, but they don't have direct connection. So CQRS will call repository, but CQRS says that split the classes, we are getting too complicated. That's a simple goal of CQRS. So I can see no more questions. So let me go back here again to my window. So 3 layers, as you can see on the screen, we have, right? Okay, now what, so if somebody wants to use this, how it is. Now, the most important thing here, which we really have to follow here is, let's see, if how the code will look like, how the client code will look like. The client code will look something like this. So I will say here, I command create customer is equal to new customer command, create customer. Look at this. Okay. Maybe I can just say create customer, right? So this create customer command, the UI will use it, and he will say, okay, create customer. We need to give him the name. We need to give him the updated date and time or whatever, right? So all the values will be given out here. Let's say I'll just give the name for now, right? And then you will have the dispatcher. So you will call the dispatcher. Again, remember, if you use factory, this can become very easy. So you will say dispatcher, take this command, dis.send. What is the command? I want to send create customer, and I want to send this thing. Now this dispatcher will automatically say, okay, this is create customer, fine. So for create customer, I will use the create customer handler. So that means now the one more thing what we need really out here is some kind of a dependency injection framework, which can go and do a lookup saying that create customer handler is create customer, update customer handler, right? So for this, you can use ninject, you can use Unity application block. So at this moment, I will just go and use ninject. So I'm going to go to my console application out here and just go ahead and use ninject. Remember that ninject is coming out very, very strong. So I would recommend really more than Unity application block. Unity application block is really great, but I've seen that recently they are not really doing too much. They are not updating, for I think from 4.5, 4.x, I didn't see any kind of updates, serious updates in them, right? So must be we can just take up ninject, which is, let me see here. So ninject, yeah, I'll install this. So this ninject dependency injector, what we can do is we can go and we can add this dependency injector, and we can say that for create command, use create command handler. For update command, use update command handler. So I'm going to go and say you're using and inject. Now this ninject, the way it works is you have to go and you have to use something called as the bindings. So I'm going to go and just copy this. So we will have somewhere a bindings out here. And in this bindings, what you will really do is first thing, this bindings class of ninject, it uses this ninject module. So just ensure that ninject is loaded into the using. So now you can say here, okay, this is I command. Create customer is an I command. And who will handle it? Create customer handler. Sorry, what is this? Create customer. So you can see now, you can go and you can put all your mappings into this one place out here, right? And you can, and then you can go and you can say to your kernel, so this is what the kernel is. There's a kernel in this ninject. And you can load this kernel. So there it is, kernel. This name is only Zazzy. This kernel, what it does is it actually just goes and loads all the mapping. That's it. So don't really think about kernel in terms of operating system, right? So this kernel, I'm sorry. You can see here, it goes and it loads the current execute assembly. So in the, this assembly.get executing assembly is nothing but it belongs to reflection. What he does is he goes here and he hunts for these method, this load method in the ninject module, and just goes and does the mapping, right? So now this kernel, if you see our dispatcher at this moment, what I've done is this is the dispatcher out here, right? So this dispatcher is really going to be some kind of a command handler, right? So here what we can do now is we can go and we can tell the dispatcher, I can just take the code from here. So we can tell the dispatcher to go and hunt for this kernel. So you can see here something like this. Right, so I can tell the kernel that get me my I command handler for this T, right? And try to handle this command, what is coming in. So you can see now in the previous code, I just put a shell code, right? But now this is the real code. So he queries the kernel and says that for this command, what is out there, what is the handler for it, right? So now what will happen is if you see, if we now try to execute this program out here very quickly. So take the command, give it to the dispatcher will hunt it out. Take a query command, give it to the query dispatcher will handle it, right? So let's see what happens. Please put down your questions on the chat. I'll come to the chat. I'll try to answer them. So you can see now this code out here, this code, what you see, the client code out here, only references the customer command, whatever has to be added, and the dispatcher, and nothing else. He does not know who is going to handle it, right? But now because of our ninject, right, you can see now here he goes and he says find the handler for this T, this create customer command, right? And he goes and he does a lookup. No matching bindings are available. Create customer, isn't it? So let's see, create customer. Create customer takes customer handler. Create customer takes customer handler. What is so wrong about it? Program.get I command handler of the T. Let me see any mistakes out here. Kernel.load. Oh, everything looks good. I'm not sure why he is not able to get the bindings. He should be able to locate the bindings. No matching binding types are available for I command handler. I command handler. I command handler. I command. Let me see my code out there. Must be I'm just making some mistakes. I'm sorry for the, but I hope that you guys have got an idea what I'm saying here. This bindings does the mapping. Okay. Actually, I have to use this like this. That's a generic. That's what I'm saying. Like, so actually this should be, okay, got it. I can't do it directly. I command handle for create customer. So sorry. That's how the binding should be. Because this create customer handler is a type of this, right? It is not the type of I command. It is a type of I command handler. So my mistake, I'm sorry. Now, if I go and if I see here, so there it is. Now I should get the handle. Let's see. Yeah, there it is. Now you can see here, this goes and this looks up this command and it goes to create customer handler. So in the same way, you can have delete customer handler. You can have an update customer handler, right? So this was a very, very simple code of how to use the command. Now, in the same way, I will not go through this now. In the same way, you will do for query. So in the same way, I'll just show you the code. Definitely for this, you will need to, I think query is very difficult to understand because in the query, you also have results. So that's why it becomes difficult, more difficult than command, right? But again, the same process almost here, query, dispatcher, and a handler. Same thing if you're doing event sourcing, I event handler, I event bus, and then a way to revert the events and the event store, so that you can store the events in a chronological order, right? So, and you can see like, from this code out here that it multiplies. One class just multiplies, right? So, so guys, let us see any questions. If you have any questions out there, so that is the basic code what you have out here. Let us go and see any questions. I'm going to go now to the chat window and let us see the questions, right? How different it is. I don't see any questions. I don't know why. Let me refresh it. Must be. Sometimes, right. So how different is this? So that is okay. So question from Venkata here, how it is different from solid principle. See, solid is a principle. Principle means what? Just one-liners, do like this. There is a difference between principle and a pattern. A pattern means you have some code, you see something technical happening, right? So now again, like I don't believe CQRS is a pattern, but you have some code implementation, right? But in case of solid, open close principle, somebody can do this way, somebody can do that way. So principle means just guidelines. But there is no source code shown. Like, when you say design pattern means you have some actual code over there. Do you prefer the usage of Mediator of CQRS or to implement CQRS pipeline manually like this? So first thing, whatever the Mediator is an awesome, awesome mapper out there, and definitely I will recommend it. But what I found is that, the Mediator actually falls apart, when it comes to complex mapping, which, this kind of framework like ninject and Unity application block, gives you more control over it, right? So the Mediator is really good for simple mapping. It helps out. But then if there is something more complex out there, you'll find that it is falling apart. So I would suggest to use something professional, more like ninject. And we are not doing this. You don't have to really do that mapping manually, frankly. The one which I've done out there, you don't have to do it really manually. You can write one simple code out there and just do it automatically as well. But I would recommend to use Mediator definitely, so that you don't write that code manually. I agree to that. Is it very similar to command pattern? Yes, Akshat. So this origination of the command, this origination of this CQRS comes from the thought of command pattern. Very good question from Akshat here. Is this anything related to command pattern of Gang of 4? Yes, it is. If you look at developers like us, what we do is that we always think that classes are nouns. So we say customer can be a class, and then supplier can be a class, or, but we can't think about add can be a class. No. How can add be a class? But here is the situation where you make a create customer as a class, an update customer as a class. You try to treat the command as a class, right? So that's, yes, the inspiration is all coming from the command pattern out there. And also the event sourcing, which you see out there, is again a direct implementation of command pattern, right? So I can see no more questions. I think this was a very, very basic, what do you call, lecture out here to just give you an introduction to CQRS. It does not, it is not really something which is, I don't want to make it a ceremony out here, right? If you want to really enjoy the ceremony, then I would really suggest everyone to go and watch the 3-4 videos, 3-4 trainings which we have taken last 3 weeks on Questpond, which was very dedicated to CQRS. So basically what I'm doing nowadays is every Tuesday, we have this design pattern training from 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. So I've covered domain-driven development, value object pattern, aggregate root, decorator pattern, adapter pattern, template pattern, and like last three weeks, or I'll say literally 4 weeks, I've just been doing CQRS, right? Okay, let's put down some notes out here, just to end this class. So first thing, do take a chance to visit Questpond, right? And second, if possible, please somewhere on your Facebook, on your Twitter, right, wherever possible, go and share that what we do out here every Sunday, so that other people are also aware of it. So very quickly, let's list down the notes out here. First thing, just some small notes from my side. CQRS is nothing but where you split your classes into create, update, and delete classes and read classes, right? Why? Because your class is becoming complicated. That is what the gist of CQRS is, right? As I've said that, this all stems from the problem, of this is all connected like with Lisco, where, the class starts looking very similar to insert, update, delete, but it is not, right? And this is also related to this bounded context, which is discussed in domain driven, where they say that, yes, they are bounded together, but the context is different. They are bounded together only by the name customer, but the context is different, right? So that is again the next thing. The other thing is CQRS was already there previously. People used to create those reporting classes, right? And GTO and some other classes, which I find that, they are indirect inspiration of CQRS pattern. I think so, personally. The next thing is, whenever you're doing CQRS, you will definitely need at least 3 sections in it. One is that you will need, like, for example, if you say command, you will need a command, you will need a dispatcher who will handle this command, and you will need a handler for that command. The same for query, the same for event sourcing, the same for other commands as well, right? As someone suggested, please use some kind of dependency injection framework. And definitely the one which one of our friends had discussed out there, Mediator. This Mediator, really, you don't have to do the mappings yourself. But I would suggest to go for something more stronger with ninject and write your own code. Mediator is too simple, for simple things. But when it comes to some complex stuffs out there, I suddenly find that what should I do, right? But it works for most of the things. The last important point, which is very important, is that CQRS is not for everything. It should not be applied at the project level. At least my personal stuff. I know that there are lots of lovers of CQRS out there who feel that why can't we apply it on the project level? It is okay to multiply the classes. They will write update separately, insert separately, fine, So I think there are different kinds of thought process out there, but I feel so that CQRS should be only used. It's like a just-in-time kind of an architecture, where I feel that as your class becomes complicated with the read, update, and delete task, then I think you should do CQRS, or else not needed, right? There is also something called as event sourcing, which is not really compulsory, but the event sourcing, what it does is it just tracks what changes has happened to the objects, right? So that you can revert back and so on, right? So these are some of the notes of CQRS out there. I can go finally and just check once if there are any questions, so that we can end the session. Okay, so Vijay, yeah, we can do one upcasting and downcasting. Yes, unit testing is there, which we are planning. Let's see, unit testing, and also we are thinking unit testing with protractor as well. So that unit testing of MV like C# and with protractor. Okay, so thank you very much, guys. Thanks a lot. I hope that this session was useful. And please, as just a request to everyone, it takes a lot of pain, for me and my team, I'm sorry, to come on this Sunday, 4 o'clock, and take some kind of knowledge sharing session out there. Please go ahead and share somewhere on your Facebook, on your LinkedIn about this, the events what we do here every Sunday, and hope that everybody gets some benefit out of same, right? Thank you very much. Okay, I'll take the last question. Subrata Roy, how to implement CQRS in Java? It's the same way. Split the classes, create interfaces. Same way. It's the same way, right? Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.